All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of FTBD. For the uninitiated, that is Fuck the Black Dog. This is a podcast that revolves purely around mental health, looking at the ins of it, the outs of it, as well as occasionally getting a very special guest on board to talk about their own journey and where they're at now and where they've come from. If you're joining us for the first time today, you're actually, you got a bit of a special treat because we actually have the one and only Steve Willis, aka Commando Steve. Steve, welcome to the show, brother.
Oh, mate, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Mate, no, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. So before we actually crack into your story and your journey, for anybody who's listening in, I do, as always, want to chuck out a bit of a trigger warning because we do talk about mental health and we sort of never know the direction that these chats are going to take. If throughout this podcast you find that there is something that triggers you or something that you're struggling with, by all means, feel free to tune out. But at the same time, also ask yourself what it is that's actually triggering you and what it is inside of you that's causing that trigger to sort of take place. So without further ado, Steve, I would argue that most people know you as Commando Steve, the heavy hitter from The Biggest Loser, the man with the cam pants, the man with the dark sunglasses. But what I want to touch on is I want to try and introduce people to Steve Willis, the man behind the sunglasses, the man who's had his own journey, and the father of four. Most people wouldn't even know that you're a father of four as well. So in your own words, how would you describe Steve Willis, the man behind the sunnies?
Mate, I'm I don't know, a big softie at heart. I think I've always been that way. I think growing up and through the younger years and then into the teens and through my military experience, you're kind of exposed to a certain way of being and maybe just from the younger years, that's the messaging that you seek and you see most. So then you kind of follow in those footsteps. You kind of pick up that baton and you live your life according to those rules.
Yep.
And I guess that methodology, that approach, that philosophy, whatever it is that you want to call it. But as I've kind of gone through my years and had my experiences, you recognize that, I don't need to be my father. I don't need to be, all those blokes I rub shoulders with in the military or, continue to apply that methodology. And I can stand on my own 2 feet and think for myself and, be aware, be mindful, be observant of my environment, which you're taught in the military, but also your internal environment, being introspective and reflective on your state of being and how you respond. Well, probably more so how you react first and foremost to your environment, but learn that you can you have a choice whether to respond or not, and then going about cultivating that garden and watering the different seeds of emotions and being a little more calm, still, peaceful, compassionate. A word that I steered away from and didn't want to hear much of in my younger years was the word love. And I think it's through my children kind of coming into this world that I recognize what unconditional love is, and it's opened me up to loving myself more and just the present moment and everyone that I cross paths with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of the man behind the sunnies, the Steve Willis, embracing from what I think most of us are, well, I think we all are when we're really young children. We're the essence of all of those things, but a lot of it's kind of trained out of us. And I've kind of, the alchemist, come back around to it.
I like that, the alchemist. Yeah, absolutely. So being a big softie, obviously, the Commando, it may be a title for The Biggest Loser, but you actually were Special Forces. You were with, back then, before it was 2 Commandos, 4 Commandos.
Yeah.
How did you find being, a bit of a softer bloke, being in such a alpha male testosterone type environment?
Well, I don't.
Do you feel it changed you at all?
It didn't change me as such, but looking back, I recognize the difference in that sense, and certain things didn't sit with me all that well. But also, I've always been a very physical person,
Yep.
and I tend to thrive in uncomfortable situations and environments, and for a lot of people, that's where it brings out your best. And you're constantly stepping into the unknown and challenging yourself, I think, has been part and parcel of my life's journey.
Yep.
But I think when you're the military, well, or just life in general, there's a lot of fear, but it's a willingness to accept those fears and then work with it, and the beauty that can come from it, or you can be debilitated by your fear. And I think the military cultivates that, doesn't it? It as much as there's the elements of fear there, it gives you the tools to best deal with it in a particular way.
Yep.
And I think how you hone those skills in the military, but I then think there's, for those, or as we transition out of the military, it's how you apply that in a different environment and a different setting. And that's where I think, and for myself, I've faced many challenges, and I think that there's a lot of people that find it hard in that transition, and still many years later. And as you said in that trigger warning at the start, you see things in your environment, you hear things in your environment, your other people do and say things, and that can really set you off.
Yep.
But asking yourself, being observant and aware of what those triggers might be, and for myself, hypervigilance is one of them.
Do you still have hypervigilance now?
That's probably my. It's a double-edged sword. It's a wonderful asset in the sense of training people, and especially group training and outdoors. But knowing when to calm it and to turn the radar off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Stop scanning. Like right across the road from me here, I'm sitting on my front porch. If I can turn the camera around,
yep.
Like, look, it kind of goes bush. And I find if I step out or go into the bush, all of those skills and just that way of being from my military days, switch on. And I feel uncomfortable to a degree in the bush if I'm not kind of
on your guts and facing out.
Yeah. That's probably a good way of putting it. You're constantly looking for, I don't know, it's like you're looking for the enemy. And
when I got out and I first started, because I used to hate camping for that. I was 3R out, so I was over the road from you, my ass handed to me, fucking not doing anything fun while you were over at the Commando. But I was the same when I first got out and I started like camping with my kids. I really had to teach myself to ratchet it back, because it's supposed to be camping and fun. I was like, all right, the tent has to go here. We have to set it up here. And we're going to set it up here. They're like, just chill. Just take it easy.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's just awareness, isn't it? It's your ability to observe oneself in the environment and to have a conversation around you're safe, everything's okay. There isn't an enemy out there with with you in their sights, and you can approach this differently. Yet I think so many struggle with that, and for me that hypervigilance, but just even down to the smaller detailing things with, I'm a bit OCD with stuff, and even before the military, I maybe it was a way in which it was a coping mechanism. I was just a clean freak, like even now, like with my garage, like again, I turn it around, like I'm just working on setting it all up, and kind of everything has its place. And I think that routine and that structure, from my younger years, but then it's honed again in the military, and it's carried across into the everyday sense. It gives me something to kind of attach to and hang on to. It's a familiarity, and
you can control it. It's in your zone.
Yeah,
Control it.
It helps to calm things.
Yeah.
But for me, with all of that, the greatest thing has come through exercise. My experiences in like doing the Biggest Loser and just being under those pressures, but embracing more of that yin side of our being, just being still, being calm. And I think back to the military, there was a lot of time doing that, being out on sentry, laying there on the ground, trying not to fall asleep, it was early warning. And there was that to a degree
to keep your head up.
is a meditation, isn't it? And I've taken that and the ability to just sit I enjoy like the meditation, just sitting, crossing my legs and just being still.
Yep.
And at the start, I remember 5 minutes used to just do my head in. And then over time, it's a practice skill. It's a
The
daily
chatter in your
practice,
head,
like
it's
going
hard
for
to
a
switch
run.
off.
Yeah. And recognizing that you spend so much of your life resisting things and actually not trying to resist. Just let what comes and let what is be, accept it in the moment. And it's through that acceptance you can create some space. You can empty your mind a little, and that tension and that agitation in your body.
Yep.
And some of those very strong emotions that overwhelm us rather quickly, you can have a conversation with them and just acknowledge they're there, but say, I don't need you right now. Like your anger, like aggression.
Rather
These
than
are
fighting
things
it, just accepting it. Yeah,
and these are
absolutely.
things in the army that we cultivated. Yeah. Like you need that shit. Like, you're not gonna go to war singing Kumbaya and freaking, hugging and embracing everybody.
I would argue
Need
that
that.
these days maybe they would. It's gotten a little bit soft lately. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, true. But it's nice to be able to, I feel, round life out a little more and have that yang, but embrace some of that yin, and it helps to just calm the energies.
Yep.
And you find yourself a little more in the middle, and then you're a little more agile. You can step left or right.
Yep.
If need be, when everything in life revolves in that yang, that output, that highly strung, that lot of tension, lot of agitation, of course you're going to fucking blow up.
I like the pendulum analogy. It's like everybody has these like two extremes, and it's like they swing back and forth between them. In order to sort of stop that swing and stop bouncing from extreme highs and extreme lows, because everybody expects all the best things in life,
yeah,
the bitter things.
Yeah,
and then when
yeah.
it swings back, they get so pissed off and so jaded that things aren't going their way. And then when it swings back in their favor, they're so elated and so happy with it. It just keeps going backwards and forwards. And it's about finding that stillness in the center of that pendulum swing and being able to stop the swing back and forth. And as you said, from that point, you can pivot left or right as you need to.
Mate, I agree with you. I think that's a perfect analogy, and that highlights, though, that we live in a reality of polarities.
Yes.
Like right now, it's day. Somewhere other, it's night. There's hot. There's cold. There's all of those polarities. But the beauty is we coexist in and amongst that.
Yes.
So we can be either of those things. But again, just calming the senses and the emotions to a place where we're not being consumed by them, so we're reacting to the environment or to these certain views or beliefs that have been there since we were kids, or we've adopted. They were our parents, and they just passed the baton on because they were incapable of handling and nurturing their suffering and reconciling with it, that they've gone, here, you have a dose of it. Can you reconcile with it? Can you come to terms with it and heal it, so that then you're not passing it on to your children?
You actually had in your book, No Excuses, you had quite a religious upbringing. But then even here in this conversation, you've mentioned, yin and yang and meditation and spirituality. Yeah. I've read a couple of different articles. Some have said that you've sort of refound your faith with God and that, that's given you a level of peace. But then I found other articles that have said that you've sort of gone on this path of Buddhism and spirituality. So where do you sort of sit in terms of religion, spirituality, and what role does that play in keeping you centered on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's not so much religion. I always, from my younger years, questioned a lot of the dogma around that. Yep. I think the essence of who we are, we're energy, and 100%. We're in this form, and we're here as in the human form to learn lessons. What are those lessons to gain knowledge? You can go pretty deep with all of this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's about just being a calmer, more centered and graceful human being, and having enough space within yourself to enable that, but also enough space for others to coexist alongside you without you getting, or for myself, getting so bent out of shape, and about how they may handle certain situations or the things that they do, or, I get in my car and drive down the road and, end up wanting to freaking run someone off the road because they're not driving the way that I think that they should be driving, or,
That's because
any
you
of
live in
those
Sydney,
things.
mate. You need to move up here to Brisbane.
Yeah. But, and it's, I just really think that, allowing and helping people to, realize that they can express themselves in a variety of different ways. And I think at the end of the day, there's two operating systems. There's the operating system of fear, and I think humanity is driven by that. And there's the operating system of love. And at the end of the day, they're both the same thing. They come back around in a continuum. But when more of us can come from that place that's a little more gentle and more united and connected, we're more rational and can come up with solutions that promote well-being and humanity stepping forward, in line with nature and with the universe. Like the collective ego is off the chart, and a lot of us live in cities and the like, and it's not a matter of caring or not caring. When I'm talking in the sense of nature's indifferent. It's not that it cares, doesn't care. You either have the skills and the understanding to survive or you don't. Yep. It's like if we went out in the ocean in a boat and it capsized, do you have the skill and the knowledge to survive?
Because the ocean doesn't give a shit whether you
yeah, that's right. And you either do or you don't. And it's the same within every environment. And for those of us who are in the military, we learned those skills, how to conform to the parameters and the structure of the military and the job that was required of us. It's just, unfortunately, a lot of us are very much stuck in those ways when we move out of the military and into a civilian life where those parameters open up a little more. Yeah. And unfortunately, we can we get stuck in those ways, and we superimpose a lot of those thought processes, those beliefs and those views onto the now, and it just doesn't serve us well.
Yeah, nailed it. I really like that. So you're at a point now where, your life's a little more balanced. Obviously, you've still got stuff going on. Everybody always does, but you've reached a point where you're a little bit more balanced. You're more accepting of, the L word of love and being loved and giving love. But it wasn't always like that for you. There was a period of time where things got a little bit sort of dark for you. Tell us a little bit about when you first started to notice that you were struggling with your headspace.
Well, mate, I in my teens, I really struggled, and I guess I was fortunate, looking back, that I used exercise, that relationship with exercise, as my means or as an outlet to express myself. And I just would beat the bejeebers out of myself with exercise. So I guess a lot of it is those thought processes going on, and the emotional states that are born of that, and then how you act off of that. So I was using a lot of anger and aggression and self-loathing and lack of self-worth as a means to motivate myself, my intention behind why I would engage with exercise, and purely just to fucking destroy myself. Yeah. Because I just didn't like who I was. So I thought through exercise I could change, my being. And stepping into the military, doing everything that the military asked of me, but I still did my own training, and I would still go to the gym, the old gym up the top there, which is now freaking hard standing with trucks parked on it. And it's got knocked down, everything, it's gone. The gym's down near the front gate. But and I would just, I'd flog the bejeebers out of myself. And then in making that conscious decision to leave the military, the relationship, because I'd exercised for so long, and plus, the regime within the military, a lot of those ways or the reasons for engaging at the start, they change over time, because exercise is hard. Yes. That's one thing about it. And to maintain the motivation and the drive to continue to do it, you need to question your intentions behind it. And that's what I started to do. And I fell in love with it. And I realized how much of a positive impact it was having in my life. So when I left the military, I thought, man, it's been so good to me. You know, I want to impart and help others to enable them to live a better quality of life in whatever manner that looks like. So started working as a trainer, and then The Biggest Loser came along. And then I competed in the CrossFit Games and destroyed myself. And then it was after that, when I was about 33, that I was like, I just can't keep operating from this place of a lot of aggression and anger. And things started to shift. And a lot of that was the change in my beliefs and views on things.
And that's where you started to integrate a lot more sort of yoga and more gentle training. Something that you would have once upon a time looked at and scoffed at.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's become sort of a staple part of your routine. Just on the training intensive, I've actually got a quote. I'm gonna read this because I want to get this right. This is actually from your book, No Excuses. So it's actually a good segue. My mind struggles with my body. My body says, I'm hurting. So my mind says, you think you're hurting now? I'll show you hurting. You keep complaining and I'll work you till your legs fall off. And I think that pretty much epitomizes exactly what you were saying. And it's actually funny because I can relate to this. Even to this day, for me personally, training's always been my salvation. Even when I was at my lowest, sometimes for me, I know that training became a form of self-harm on more than one occasion where I would go into the gym with the intent of hurting myself, of going several reps past failure, of just leaving myself a fucking puddle on the floor. Yeah. And I've actually read, because I read in an article, same thing, and I actually think I wrote the words, you've used training as a form of self-harm to help balance your mindset. Would that be right?
Yeah, definitely. And I did that up into my 30s. Geez, I've even done some sessions lately. Like it was months ago now, and I was at a friend's place, and just a few things happened, and so I left and I went home, and I had the garage. I shut the doors. The garage door was down, and I just got on the rower and rode 10Ks.
Boom!
Mate, there was no fan on. All the doors were closed. Like I was a mess.
Punishing.
But I just went there, and how I would have done it in the past probably would have been vastly different to how I did it those few months ago.
Yeah.
But I was more conscious of my actions and my reasons for doing it, and I was probably using it more as a way of just working off a lot of that tension, a lot of that agitation.
Yeah.
And I felt much better for it off the back of it. But yeah, in the past, I did. But in the past, yeah, mate, it was just, I just go in there with the intentions of just destroying myself. And, I think that's the beauty with exercise. As much as you might be coming from that place, to stick with it over time, good things come from it, unlike alcohol and drugs and the like. It's, that's a very slippery slope. Those, kind of adopting those ways of being to cope, and unfortunately the habitual nature that comes and the addictions off the back of that can be devastating.
Absolutely. Just with what you're saying there regarding your training and people's perception of training and knowing their reason behind it, it really resonated with me, because one of the things that we coach at Black Dog Coaching is training and nutrition. They're just tools. Like everybody who coaches fitness and nutrition, it's like, here's a program, here's your nutrition, here's your diet, go forth. But they never go into the why behind it. There's always the how, you do your push-ups like this, you do your sit-ups like this, but there's never the why behind it. And we actually talk about what we call the boom-bust cycle. And you'd have seen this a million times. Somebody goes, it's fucking New Year's, I'm going to get into shape. I'm going to do it. Yeah. And they'll train well, they'll train hard for 2-3 weeks. And all of a sudden they'll, skip a couple of workouts this week. And then they're only training once or twice a week. And they're not training at all. The same thing with the diet. The diet's on point, and then all of a sudden a few extra cheat meals are getting in. And then it's more of a half diet, then they're off it altogether. And they go in this cycle until the next shiny object comes along and they go, fuck, I need to get in shape. And the cycle starts over and over again. And a big part of that I've found is that people don't know why they're training. They literally just go, it's New Year's, I need to get in shape. Or, I want to look good naked. But they don't have the actual drive behind it or the reasoning behind it to understand or to keep them pushing through to break that continuous cycle. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there with like having training with a reason and training with a purpose, not just training.
Yeah, and hey, it all comes back to intent, yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of us, especially when we're younger, we afford a lot of time and energy doing things to fit in, you know, to have our efforts and who we are as a person validated, you know, this. But we come to a realization, I think, as we get a little older, that that we are enough, that we are worthy, and to actually, you know, believe in oneself. And then that source of energy and your willingness to divide your energy and time, you're less tolerant to it, and you put your energy and time into the things that are most important.
Absolutely.
And that can be even in the daily sense. Like right now, like why get so worked up and angry? Because it messes with your immune system, and it just diminishes and your capacity overall. When you can, if you can take, you know, some time in your day to just calm yourself, you find you have more energy to do the things that you love. And you know, people, even with this COVID stuff and being homebound, you know, and training, I've had some friends that, you know, they're up there in triathlon and they do it, you know, or different events and the like, and their motivation and their reasons for doing things have waned. And that's because a lot of what they do is based in competing in an event that's external to them. And now when those events aren't being run, what's the point?
Lost their purpose.
Yeah. And then, and for me, and I wanted to touch on this earlier, but it's come back around. It's actually quite beautiful. Is doing mundane shit. Wash the fucking dishes, make your bed, you know, do the laundry, like sweep, vacuum the floors, put things away. There's a lot of beauty to be found in just those menial, mundane tasks. And if you can find the beauty in that stuff, you'll find the beauty in everything. And then you'll see the beauty in the present moment all the time. And think back to our younger years in the military. They made us do that, put the smiley face in our socks, do all of that, because it was that was a responsibility piece. Yeah. If we couldn't be responsible for that stuff, why would they allow a weapon system to be in our hands? You know, and all of that. And I think that discipline, that cultivation of accountability, and you know, instilling those attributes, I think is extremely important. But again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, mate. And you got to be willing to do it for yourself.
Absolutely. I often talk about the domino effect. So if you had a domino that was the size of your pinky nail, right, and you flick that over, it has enough kinetic energy to knock over another domino 1.5 times its size, and so on and so forth, right? So if you've got a stack of dominoes and each domino is 1.5 times bigger than the last one, you can knock over a pinky-sized domino, and inside of, I think it's 21 dominoes, might be 24, you've got enough kinetic energy and a domino big enough to knock over the Empire State Building. So you can flick over something the size of your pinky, and less than a minute later, that last domino could knock over the Empire State Building. When I talk to people about discipline and about doing the little things right, it starts from the time you get out of bed. So when that alarm goes off, stick it at the end of your fucking bed so you have to get out of bed to turn it off. And then you're up. The next thing you got to do, that's a domino. That's a pinky-sized domino knocked over. Next thing you got to do is just get your fucking shoes on. Once your shoes are on, you're going to train. You're not going to take them off and go back to bed. So there's another domino. And then you train and you feel good for the day because you've got nothing in the box, and it just ticks. And it compounds from there. If you can get 3 or 4 little dominoes knocked over first thing in the morning, you will fucking devour the day every day because you've got that momentum. You've got that kinetic energy from knocking over those first dominoes. And by the end of the day, you're fucking knocking over the Empire State Building.
I love it. And you just saying that then reminded me of a book called Crooked Cucumber by Shunryu Suzuki. So Shunryu Suzuki was a Zen Buddhist master. He didn't write it. It was written about him. He grew up in Japan and went to America and helped to establish Zen Buddhism. But when he was a young Buddhist monk, and when they're young, they'd given them a little leeway in getting up in the morning, because they were young. But they'd have to be up at 4 a.m. every morning to do their first meditations and the like. And then they'd clean and keep the place wherever, you know, the what do you call the monasteries and the like they lived in.
Yep.
And he said, you know what I learnt over the days and months when I was young in getting the ability to get out of bed is to get up before you think.
React before you think.
It's just get up. And then, as you said, then that domino effect just takes place, and doing the small things. And that's what I talk about with exercise is those small things, and hold yourself to a standard, like have that standard. And, you know, I'm talking like a push up and a squat and a lunge and whatever those things are, because when you focus on those things, you see a significant rate of return. Whereas if you're just focused on intensity and the idea of a repetition, you go chasing that stuff. And what is it at the end of the day? Does it really matter? Does the weight on a barbell that you deadlift really matter? Or is it what you're learning about yourself and life that comes from lifting at? As you said, it's a tool. And that's, it took me quite a while to recognize that, because it was all about output, which is that yang, that compulsive nature to just be on the go.
Did you feel being sort of, you know, having celebrity status inside of the fitness industry, did that create pressure on you to always be the best, to be better? Like, you know, like, I'm Commando Steve, people know who I am, I've got to fucking dominate this. Did you find that it affected that you felt like you had to perform better than the man next to you?
Not so much better, but just be on par. Like, so in sense that peer thing. And I think the idea of that, and having come from the military, you know what used to happen to those who used to try and show everyone else up and put their hands on the hips and go, I was first. Mate, you get crushed.
Yep. Grey man, middle of the pack.
Yeah, be the grey man. Exactly. just do what's necessary and stand the test of time. And, you know, you got to be able to get you know, it's one thing to be able to, you know, hump the pack and walk the distance to the fight, but you got to have enough left in you to fight the fight. And that's always been my approach. But yeah, definitely for a while, I kind of carried this idea that of people's expectations of who I should be. And as I started to kind of unclip that body armor and remove it and recognize that all I had to be was myself. And the more rounded I was as a person, and the ability to communicate and give a different perspective, or recognize that someone might not understand that the point of view that I'm coming from, be able to, you know, shift tack and articulate it in a different manner, is a skill. It's a craft, and that helps to unite and connect people, and they feel like they're a part of something. And when there's those bonds, mate, people will do anything. Yeah, like we'll lay down our lives for it. And I think back to the military. You know, when you had corporals and sergeants when you're a young digger, who would bark the orders at you and they'd try and fill you full of fear, you didn't respect them at all. But the ones who were hard but fair, and when you were digging in, they were there digging in with you, and they were on the long pack marches with you, mate, you respected them. Like, and even to this day, you uphold them in a manner that is vastly different to those who do the finger pointing and sipping their brew, having a freaking dart. Yeah. You know, kind of dictating, do as I say, not as I do.
The best advice I ever got while I was in the military was learn the job of the man above you and teach your job to the man below you. And you could see that in the natural leaders, the guys who, if you fuck something up, rather than just coming over and beasting you and just laying into you, they'll be like, all right, where'd you go wrong? All right, how can we fix it? What can you do next time to make it better? The guys who come over and actually mentored you and taught you what you did wrong, rather than just fucking laying into you.
Yeah.
That resonated with me, and I still do it to this day. It's like, but now the people below me now are my kids. So I learned the job of people above me, and those are the people who are doing better than me inside of my niche, inside of my field. I learn from them. But then as I'm learning stuff about mental health, about training, about nutrition, as I'm learning that, I'm already starting to feed that down to my kids, so that they will hopefully have the knowledge that's taken me. You know, I'm nearly 40 now, and I was probably 38 before I started to get my shit into one sock. You know, hopefully by the time they're 13, 14, 15, they will have all that stuff that it's taken me a lifetime to figure out. And they can put that and map it to their own journey.
And they're picking that stuff up much younger, aren't they? That's what I said to my daughter. My daughter, one of my daughters is 12. And I remember having a conversation with her when she was 8. So, 4 years ago. And I said, you know what, it's taken Dad 40 years to understand. You and I are having a conversation about now. You're right. There's 32
Exactly.
years. She's 32 years in front of me.
Yeah.
And back to that whole, we are, I believe, you know, we're energy, and, you know, there's a consciousness within each and every one of us, and their consciousness, the younger generations, is so much more evolved than we ever were. And you know, even my youngest, who's 4, like I'm just blown away by some of the things that he says, his ability to articulate in words how he's feeling and how certain situations make him feel
They're
like
great
a lot of joy.
they're great at vocalizing their emotions. Whereas we grew up, you didn't display
we were shut
emotion.
down.
You just shut that. You just kept it inside.
Yeah.
Whereas kids these days are amazing at vocalizing their emotions, and they've got like a level of emotional intelligence. But like you said, it took me fucking 38 years to figure out. They're doing it before they've got the title teen in their age, you know?
So we're a part of that being possible. So we should, you know, sit for a moment and actually smile in and amongst a lot of the upset that we experience every day, that these generations are just, their quality of life and their understanding is just at the next level. I think it's wonderful.
Being a father of 4, how much do your kids understand about Commando Steve and about your history? Like, obviously they would know that Dad's on the TV, Dad, you know, people know who Dad is. Do they know much about your sort of history, depression, mental health, anything like that? Is that something that you've discussed with your kids, or is it sort of separate from that?
Yeah, like the boys, the younger ones, they're a bit too young for all of that. Like Jack, who's 8, he kind of understands, you know, the commando thing, and Axel too, but they never really saw any of that stuff. And the boys are kind of interested. Oh, Dad, were you in the army and this and that? And they see some of the, you know, the memorabilia and the like. But yeah, the girls, my eldest being 21, she definitely gets it, and she's dealing with her own stuff as well. And my 12-year-old, I don't know, you know, like I have a wonderful bond with all of my kids, but there's something about she's the female version of me. And we have a slightly different bond than the rest of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, and she really looks out for me. Like she's I don't know how to really put it in words, but she's
in tune with you.
Yeah. We seem to be just on that level. Like we can knock about and not say anything. It's like having a good mate, you know. You can knock about and not have to say anything to one another or do anything to try and, you know, make sure that friendship is still intact. Like,
absolutely.
those bonds and just that connection is there, and you just roll, you know, you just make stuff happen.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, being in the public eye as well, I mean, it's one thing for your kids to see what's going on there. How much extra pressure does being in the media and being in the public eye add when, I mean, obviously, you know, you've been through divorce, you've been through the ringer with that sort of stuff, you went through stuff with Sage, and it was all very public.
Yeah.
How does that, I mean, I've been through a divorce myself, I've been through, you know, my own variations of different types of pressure, and I couldn't fathom having to deal with that, as well as having the scrutiny of the public eye on top of that. How did you find that when things were starting to fall apart and having just the media just creating shit out of fucking thin air just for the sake of a story, or just writing their own slant on a story? How do you deal with that? Having the media twist and turn any sort of facts, or even just the fact that anything that does happen is public knowledge?
I guess people make up their own opinions at the end of the day, and you can only be yourself. And when you hold close the things that mean most to you, and you focus on that, a lot of that other nonsense just falls by the way. But it's not to say in the midst of it all that it doesn't have its effects on you. And that's where having people close to you, you know, even your kids, so you can hold them close and remind yourself that they love you regardless, and you're their father, and that they don't care so much for that stuff. They just want
you're
you.
Not Commando Steve.
That's right. And that just helps to calm a lot of the stuff. But then I've had my moments where in the media I've kind of lost my cool with paparazzi and the like because they've been photographing my kids and I've asked them not to, and
Yeah.
you know they don't give a damn. But yeah, when it comes to stories being fabricated and then people having their 2 cents, you know, from behind, you know, the computer screen, the keyboard warrior, like, you know, if what I'm doing is so polarizing for you or a story, what's upsetting you is actually a mirror. There's something that I've done or I do that you haven't been able to reconcile within yourself. And for you to express it outwards, to try and project it outwards, you know, maybe first just put a beat and, you know, take a breath and just think, why is this upsetting me so much?
Why is this
and
true?
Why am I so compelled to engage with it? And, you know, a lot of us, when we're under pressure, you know, we default to coping mechanisms that maybe aren't so pretty and serve us well. But when we recognize that a lot of the time we're probably defaulting to habits that have been in place since we were really young kids, we can smile about it and go, there I am, just being a 5-year-old again. And it just helps to just take away some of the seriousness and just realize that you know, it's maybe not as bad as I'm making it out to be, and that calms things, and you can be a little more gentle with yourself and the situation or the environment, and you can be when I say the word respond or response, there's a choice in that, whether you choose to engage or not. And sometimes just turning and walking away or not saying anything actually is the more practical thing to do. Exactly. It's like, you know, stoke your own fire. Like, you know how it's like you want to start a fire and you want me to blow on it and create the flame. It's like, stuff it. Go and waste your energy doing that. I'm going off in the other direction.
Just like, so it really boils down to managing your perceptions, just taking a step back, looking at the situation and just going, you know what, this actually doesn't fucking affect me at all.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to drink my coffee and get on with my day, mate. You're going to fill your boots. And
one of the things, again, in the Black Dog coaching, one of the things that we teach, I call it the 3-foot world. I read in a book somewhere, I can't remember where, but it's actually a rock climbing term or a free climbing term. So that those psychopaths who climb without like safety gear, and they call it their 3-foot world. And it's like, when you're halfway up a cliff without safety gear, it doesn't matter how far it is to the bottom. It doesn't matter how far it is to the top. Literally the only thing that matters is where you can put your next hand or your next foot. And they call that the 3-foot world. And then I sort of, when I was instructing at Singo, I took that and I started applying it to training. So it's like, when you're in a room and you're getting ready to kick in a door, it doesn't matter what's on the other side of the door. You can't control that. It could be little kids, or it could be a dude with a machine gun, but you have absolutely zero control over it. What you do have control over is you have control over your breath, which means you have control over your heart rate, which means you have control over your fine motor skills. You have control over your team. You have control of the room that you're in. You have control of your weapon, your equipment, but you don't have control of the other side. So all you can do is focus on that which is in your immediate control. When you get through that door, then it becomes your problem. Then it's a part of your 3-foot world, and you deal with it as it pops up.
Yeah.
And then when I got out of the army and I started doing this coaching, I then applied it. I realized it applied to life. Absolutely anything in life. You can take a step back and go, what can I control in this situation? And you literally take a minute, do some box breathing, bring your heart rate down, remove yourself from fight or flight, and just look around and go, all right, I can't control this. This person's a dickhead, obviously. I can't control the things they're saying. I can't control the things they can do, but I can fucking walk away from it, or I can choose not to respond, or I can choose to respond at a later time. So one of the big things we coach, and it falls exactly into what you're saying there, is about managing your perceptions. We call it the 3-foot world. Step back, look around your 3-foot world. If it's completely out of your control and nothing you think, speak, or do is going to change it, just let it go. Physically let it go. Physically fucking take the time to breathe it away. If you can control it, sweet. Make a plan and execute. If you can't control it, breathe, let it go. And I've found that that's probably, out of all the things that we coach, that's made the biggest difference, in particular to guys who are struggling with letting go of the past. A lot of guys who are coming from a place of, you know, maybe childhood abuse or a bad divorce or custody. It's like, what can you change in this situation? They're like, nothing. Like, then let it go. You can't change it. And you're literally going to burn up every piece of your sanity trying to think about something that you have zero control over. And I think that falls perfectly into line with what you're saying about everything. Just if it's out of your control, just manage your perceptions and work on what you can control.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have so much more energy, as we were saying earlier. Like and you can afford that energy and time to the things that you're most passionate about and you love. And then, and when you can be consistent with that and you build that routine, those structures, you know, or even those rituals around it, you find a rhythm. And isn't it energy, you know, when it's like listening to music, you know, it's got that rhythm, it's got that beat, it's sweet music. And I did an Ironman distance triathlon last year with Matty Rogers as the part for his charity over in Germany. And mate, doing the training for that, and you know, the swimming and the running and the cycling and all that long distance stuff. It was amazing what I gained from just that, as you were saying before, that domino effect. You get things, you start that momentum and get that motion going.
Yep.
And then that's just the catalyst, and then off you go. And but it's your ability to maintain a level of awareness in the midst or in and amongst what it is that you're doing. And the more you grow that awareness or that those observation skills, back much like in the army when you're out patrolling the bush or, you know, in an urban environment.
You get your bush eyes on and you can see things that you've normally seen before.
But you also, you find, and there's that rhythm, you find yourself in a state of calm. And it's that state of calm where, you know, everything just seems to slow down, and it's I don't know, it's more beautiful. Joyful. Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to wrap it up here, and I'm going to let you get back to your day, bro, because I know you're an incredibly busy man. But before we go, there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who sort of sit on the fence about changing their mental health, about changing their physical health. Maybe it's fear that's holding them back. Maybe it's an uncertainty. If you had a piece of advice for anybody who's struggling with their mental health and doesn't know what to do next, what would be your number one bit of advice for them to help start that domino effect? What's the first step that you feel they should take to get their life back on track, or to start to take control of their headspace?
Hey, there's a myriad of different things that you can do. And engaging with your body in a physical sense and doing some form of exercise is paramount. And you need to make it a daily practice. You've got to put those habits and routines in place. And as we were saying, you know, the sooner we can do that, you know, once our day begins, you know, we create that domino effect. We tick the boxes, and over time, it becomes a part of your norm. And you know, something that I've really enjoyed lately, as I was saying earlier, is the meditation. But if sitting and being still is too much for you, I'm telling you, yoga does amazing things, and it brings up a lot. It brings up a lot of stuff, because you need to be strong, you need to be courageous, but you also need to be gentle, and you can't force it, otherwise you'll break. And and it helps you, because then you connect your mind with your body through your breath, and you go inwards, and it's much like other skills. You practice it and it feels really uncomfortable and foreign, and you feel like a fake, and then one day the penny drops and you just go to a whole new level, and then the door opens and off you go. But
it's like any skill, when you start it, you're gonna suck. When you do it the second time, you're still gonna suck, and then eventually you'll suck just a little bit less. And then eventually you'll sort of be okay at it. It's like nobody just wakes up an expert at anything. It's like you're going to suck at anything.
That's right. And I think in and amongst that, the daily practice, engaging and doing something physical, and it doesn't have to be hard. Just start by walking around the block if you're not. You know, and when you find yourself becoming overwhelmed and agitated, do things that are conducive with calming yourself, or to just expel that tension and that agitation, so that you can be a little clearer minded and unite and connect with the breath, and grow your communication skills. Like, have someone that you can confide in, that you can talk to, who isn't judgmental, and they'll just sit there and listen to you, or learn practice your writing skills. Write down what you're thinking.
Journaling's a big
You know,
one. Yeah.
yeah, and
Gratitude,
because
journaling. Yeah.
you start to articulate in words, and you hear yourself, and you go, man, some of that shit that I'm thinking is just damn right nonsense. And how many of us did it even in our army days with our mates? You know, that close circle, and they'd all look at you and go, what the fuck, like, mate. but they're not judging you. They're just, because a lot of us, we already know what's right. We just then say things to confirm or validate what we're saying or thinking already. And if collectively the group goes, nah, man, that's just, don't be thinking that shit. Yeah. We can quickly drop it and attach to something different. But for those that are just knocking about in these four walls or inside their homes and they're not engaging with anyone, you got to engage with people. We're human. We need interaction. We need connection. And we need to be able to communicate and practice and grow your communication skills, because there's so much liberation and beauty that can come from it.
I think that's a really good point, because I know for me personally, I was sort of 36, 37 before I developed the vocabulary to express what was going on in my head. I knew for a long time that I was struggling with a lot of things. I knew that the wheels were coming off, but I didn't have either the emotional maturity to discuss it, or I didn't have the emotional vocabulary to explain what was going on. And then once I actually was able to get it out, and I went and I got help, you know, what I realized is that it's not normal, but, you know, there's words for what I'm experiencing, and there's ways to articulate, and there's ways to work around it. But it took me a long, like we're talking well over a decade, to be able to articulate what was going on for me inside of here, because I just felt like I was different. Like I couldn't get it out as to why I felt different inside. Yeah. So I think it's for men in particular, it's a well-known fact that we suck at communicating, and it's probably because as kids, it's beaten out of us. You know, you don't talk about emotions. You don't talk about what's going on for you. You don't talk about, you know, you don't cry. You fall over and skin your knee. You know, boys don't cry, whatever. And I think that for me personally, it took a long time to get around that, to navigate it, to find the emotional maturity and vocabulary to actually express what was going on. And like you said, journaling is a great way to actually to build that vocabulary and build that ability to communicate it. Because if you can communicate it honestly to yourself, you then have the capacity to communicate it to others in your life.
Yeah. And don't they say some of the most complex skills and things in life, when you have the ability to teach it to a child, you know you're on the right path.
That's exactly right.
You can articulate it in words that aren't complicated. They're very easy to understand. Anyone can connect the dots. And
I actually think it's easier to teach a child than it is to teach a platoon of diggers. I'm just going to say that.
Well, true, because they have a beginner's mind, Their mind is so open to everything. It hasn't been closed down, and they're not stuck in a certain set of beliefs and views around things. And the more you can liberate yourself from your views and beliefs, and just be open enough to entertain the idea or listen to what others have to say, you can then give it a go. And that's, I think, probably one of my greatest attributes is when I question something, I'll read. It's like you go on a bit of a quest or a search or a journey, or it's funny how you might be thinking a certain way, and then someone says something, you go, damn, that's
what I was thinking.
That's what, but the important thing is, it's not just the comprehension, it's taking the comprehension and embodying it and seeing if it works for you. And that's what exercise has done for me. It's not like my mind just knows what a squat is. You know, my big toe knows what a squat is. My calf knows, my quads, my glutes, my hammies. You know, every cell in my body is a squat when I need to squat. It is a push-up. And, you know, it's not just the mind. It's like, how does your hand know how to, your hands know how to hold a weapon system and pull the trigger and, you know, change magazines and, you know, do stoppage drills and all of that type of stuff. You know, it becomes hard. Yeah, it becomes second nature. But at the start, we could watch someone do it and we can comprehend it. But as soon as the system's put into your hand, you don't have a freaking clue.
Yeah.
You know, it's not until you embody, you know, those ways of being and see if they work for you. And then if they do, as Bruce Lee said, be water, and you know, give it a go and adopt the things that work for you and disregard the rest.
100%. All right, Steve, man, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, not just for your time today, because I know you are incredibly busy, but for your honesty as well. And I genuinely feel that those guys out there listening to this, I mean, I personally took a lot away from it myself. So I know that guys who are listening to this sort of stuff and going on their journey or at the beginning of their journey, they would have taken a truckload away from this. So I want to thank you for your time and for your honesty during this interview, brother.
Thanks, mate. And thanks to everyone that's listening to the podcast.
No worries at all. All right, I'm going to let you get back to it, brother. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll keep in touch.
All right, mate.
Take care.
Bye.